Runner-up in Brandon Burton on Mono Red Aggro, Team of Reclamation, one of the defining matchups of this standard format.
And this is a rematch from our quarterfinals yesterday, where Brandon Burton just demolished Corey Baumeister very quickly, gave Corey time to, do something with the rest of his evening. But Corey will be looking for revenge in this match. And a decent curve out here for Brandon Burton to get things started.
On the play, no less, really just replaying yesterday's match, Scorched Spitter, the sort of Savannah Lion of this deck, where you actually have a 1-drop that can attack for 2 on turn 2 like you want.
Corey scribes to the top with Temple of Epiphany, likes what he sees there. It's not going to like to see this start from Brandon Burton, I imagine, though.
Yeah, having this early copy of Runaway Steamkin is one of the easiest ways to just run away with the game and punish your opponent for having a clunkier start or sinking a bunch of time into stuff that doesn't impact the battlefield, like Growth Spiral.
And Corey has 4 copies of Storm's Wrath in his sideboard. So in this game 1, Brandon can unload his hand onto the battlefield, and Corey's going to have to keep up 1-for-1 with cards like Ether Gust, which can be very good if you're at parity, but it looks like it's going to be too slow in this game.
Yeah, look, and this is exactly what we were talking about just a moment ago. That Growth Spiral didn't do anything, and now Corey has not actually played a card that matters this game, and is at 12 life, facing down 4 creatures, 8 power among them. What is he supposed to do against this?
Tin Street Georgia poised to join the party here as well. But Ether Gust copied by expansion by Corey to deal with, I have to assume, both of those Runaway Steamkins.
But at what cost? Corey had to shock for that, and we see a Torbrand hanging out in hand for Burton.
2 more haste threats. Oh, exactly. Brandon gets a Cosmic Gate out of his mono red deck now.
You ready for game 2? I feel like Corey's ready for game 2.
Good game, says Brandon Burton. And we will head for game 2 between these 2 top 8 players from yesterday.
And something that we saw Burton lean into a good bit is specifically these copies of Red Cat Melee out of the sideboard. Those are going to be great against Nightpack Ambusher, as well as any copies of Bone Crusher Giant if Corey were to have those in his deck today.
Now that calculation is more interesting here because Corey has, by my count, 1 copy of Ambusher in his whole 75, but he does have the 3 copies of Bone Crusher Giant. So unclear exactly how many copies of Melee Burton will want given that information. Doesn't have too many other good sideboard options, but we saw those copies of Subira, Tolzidi, Caravana do fantastic work for him yesterday against Corey Baumeister in a close game 3, allowing him to get over that finish line.
Right. One of the ways that this mono red deck can tend to struggle against Team of Reclamation is when they get to clog up the battlefield with their Shark Typhoons, with those Bone Crusher Giants, and so on. And Subira represents a good bit of reach whenever you can put even just an Ember Cleave on a 1/1. That's going to represent 4 points of damage on that one card that Team of Reclamation may have thought they had already answered by virtue of just deploying enough creatures to the battlefield.
And for Corey's side, as we said, 4 copies of Storm's Wrath, 3 copies of Bone Crusher Giant to tie the room together here. So in theory, this matchup gets a lot harder for Brandon after sideboarding, but he will be on the play for game 3 if it comes down to that. And we can't count him out in this game either.
And this is the kind of hand that's a little bit more awkward for Burton, where you're not super happy to keep Fervent Champion and 10 Street Dodger, as they are slightly weaker than some of your other 1-drops that you would want, but Torbrand and Embercleave are the power cards here.
I was about to say, his ideal draw would be a 2nd copy of Fervent Champion. That's exactly what rolls off the top of the deck here.
That is perfect.
And you have to think, Corey Baumeister, shocking in that breeding pool, representing something, maybe a Stomp into Bone Crusher Giant, maybe Ether Gust. And Stomp will take down that original Fervent Champion. So just getting in for 2 here. And Corey now, we see how good Bone Crusher Giant is against these aggressive decks. If he has an untapped land, he can just play a 4/3, which right now is bigger than any before.
Yeah, and being able to answer that other copy of Fervent Champion last turn was so crucial for Baumeister, because it also means that Burton can't develop this Embercleave onto the battlefield.
And Corey just gets to pass the turn, not facing down attacks here. Burton will get to attempt Torbrand. Can't stomp that one so easily, and yeah, now creatures get to come into the red zone. But an Ether Gust on Torbrand mid-combat would be devastating here if Baumeister has it.
And is that a pass?
Yeah.
Wow.
And Embercleave have both of those at the ready.
Yeah, just being able to Embercleave is a sort of 1-2 punch, a Splinter Twin situation, as we affectionately refer it to here with Torbran or with that Fervent Champion or something to that effect, is sort of the recipe for success.
Bogota Giant rumbling in now, followed up by Stormwrath to sweep the board, and now Cast Breath and Embercleave looking a lot less impressive. But Tibble here, a nice follow-up, generating an attack at this turn, an attack at next turn, stopping Uro from clawing Corey's life total back up even further.
Turning off the incidental life gain from the Team of Reclamation deck is one of the biggest things that you can do if you're in the seat of the red player.
We have seen so many games where the Reclamation deck stabilizes at 5 or 6 life with an Uro, where if it weren't for that life gain, they would have died a long time ago. And look at this, Torbran, again, for Brad and Burton. Perfect when those episodes and as well.
Having these extra big spells is so important when you get to the late stages of the game against something like Team of Reclamation. Not spending draw steps on the likes of 10 Street Dodger or honestly mediocre copies of things like Runaway Steamkin is huge.
And this is Ghostfire in response, perhaps taking for an answer. Torbran will for now.
Burton trying to decide what he can actually play around, reading that there's a Shark Typhoon. Baumeister does have it, and this is not a trade that he's happy with, but you're going to have to get through it sometime, and you can't just never attack with your creatures, right? You just got to take your medicine.
And Corey takes 3 damage on the way out from that devil, thanks to Torbran. Laser Sacred Land here. Oh, and another Storm's Wrath as a follow-up.
And you've got to be disappointed that because of that Torbran not being on the battlefield in time, that is only going to be 1 point from the devil, not the same 3 that the first one was.
And Burton will be disappointed that his opponent shocked an Atlanta and took 2 damage, knowing what that means in terms of interaction from Corey's side.
Oh, and the Uro after Tybalt's taken off. This is going to put Corey all the way back up to 11. When Burton is on fumes, he has this Embercleave that he never got a chance to develop. No creatures out. Really, really needs to find something like a light up the stage to get back into this game.
And Embercleave cast here for the sticker price for Brandon Burton, but just finding a land. If he found a haste threat there, was able to attach the Embercleave and then maybe next turn activate his Castle Emberth, that could get something done, but this isn't it. And there is a 1-1 shark there for Corey Baumeister. Going to be followed up by a considerably bigger giant. Getting 3 life, drawing a card, making a land drop. You know what the deal is at this point.
And you can see Burton deciding if he even wants to show that Runaway Steamkins are in his deck still. Post-border, if this is just the point where you're supposed to pack them in.
And every turn you draw Runaway Steamkin on turn 9 with an empty hand, Ryan Overturf gets his wings. So I'm sure he's feeling a sense of accomplishment that he can't quite pinpoint the reason for right now, but he'll understand it when he watches the broadcast later on.
It's like dads when you touch the thermometer, you know?
He just knows.
Exactly. He knows there was a disturbance in the force, but it brought him joy. Burton plays on, knowing there are chains with light up the stage that can theoretically win from here, and with hundreds of dollars on the line and the top 8 berth at risk, you need to play to every single out.
Robber the Roach is not it. And this might honestly be an attack just for information to maybe see what's in Corey's deck.
Robber plus Embercleave, maybe? Burton says not maybe. Packs him in, ready for game 3, on the play.
And you see him hedging a little less than he did against the creatures yesterday with just 1 copy of Red in his 60.
And this is a situation...
Choosing to keep in Bonecrusher Giant instead to the bench yesterday.
Right, you just want to get those shocks out of the deck, and most of the Bonecrusher Giants on the bench as well. A lot of the reason you don't want those in your deck is they are just going to be unfavorable mana exchanges, but having a copy of that over Red Cat Melee is going to serve a similar role while also providing a little bit of reach instead. That goes double if you think the creature you need to worry about the most is just a Shark Typhoon tokens.
And Brandon Burton here, in the matchup that he won yesterday in the quarterfinals, on the play Game 3 with his mono red aggro deck, looking to stay alive for top 8 in this tournament. And a hand full of 1-drops with Castle Ambreth.
A classic 1-drop draw. And if Corey doesn't have an early growth spiral, being able to activate these Castle Ambreths the turn after Corey can just cast, say, one interactive spell is going to be huge.
And look at that. That's one way Seamkin, but Brandon may decide, there is an argument, I suppose, for just deploying 2 more 1-drops. Burton decides to chase the dream with Seamkin. And that does get stomped.
But this means the shields are down.
Burton is unloading. Doctor number 1. Doctor number 2. Second Sculpt Spitter as well. And that Castle Ambreth on the board is terrifying for Corey Baumeister.
Really, just saying a 1, 2, 3, 4 like he's fronting a band. Oh my god, this is 12 damage. 10 damage? Final answer, 10 damage.
Last time, really. Would be
How dare you speak that into existence, Dom?
I did. Doing my best to manifest it on Brandon's behalf. Doesn't come through, just finds a mountain. And look at that. There is the Blast Zone.
Oh, floating the mana.
He even has the bonus reclamation.
Letting it hang for the reclamation to take it out that way.
And Corey imploring the auto tapper not to tap the Blast Zone this time around.
Oh,
and there's the Torbrand 1 turn too late. I should have been more specific. I made the monkey's paw clench, Emma.
How could you do this to Brandon Burton, the mono red aggro hero that this format needs?
Blast Zone sweeping away all of those creatures. Torbrand will enter the battlefield and be a substantial source of damage by itself, but any good follow-up from Corey can help get the job done, and that could be Uro if his graveyard is well stocked.
1 turn sooner, and that Torbrand would have been doom. It would have been 18 points of damage with Corey at 17.
Frustrating turn of events for Burton. Another growth spiral from Corey.
Well, Corey does have a bit more work to do.
Does Corey have a good follow-up here?
I would not classify as the front half of an Uro as a good follow-up.
The back half, though, we'll take that one. Oh, and there's Anax hardened in the forge. Torbrand rumbles in.
Is this just going to do it? Is this just going to connect?
Connecting for 4 damage. Oh, but here's Brazen Borrower to bounce that back to the hand.
What if Baumeister's hand is just a bunch of Storm's Wraths you can't cast?
I could see it. Yeah, only one source over there for Corey Baumeister. Wilderness Reclamation can be the second one for the sake of Explosion, but not for a card you need to cast in your main phase.
Oh,
look at this. A gigantic Shark Typhoon. Joining Uro on the battlefield, Corey back up in double digits. And this is a substantial clock by itself for Corey.
Yeah, what a turn.
Now. And there we go. Corey gets revenge on Brandon Burton. Moves up to 3-1. Brandon Burton now knocked back to 2-2. But still chasing some points and some money here.
Oh, absolutely. After our finals appearance yesterday that was worth $800, getting another few $100s today would just be a great cap